What is up, everyone? Rissa here with Culture Fuzz. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of the Culture Fuzz podcast, and I'm really excited about this one. Well, I'm always excited about all of my podcast episodes, but I guess that's a good thing, right? But this week is something special. It is my birthday week, guys. Yes. I will be turning the big 33, and it's kind of awesome. It's really awesome because I haven't been excited for a birthday in a very long time. I'd say like the past few years was just like, yeah, okay, like whatever, it's just another day, going to work, not doing anything special. But this year, I think because with the pandemic and having to be quarantined and having no other choice but to, really work on myself even more and self-heal and get to know myself. As a result, I think it has made me excited about this year and celebrating, year 33 and stuff like that. So I went ahead and designed and did like a little birthday photo shoot that I'll be posting on Tuesday. That was, a really cool way to express some self-love. I got all dolled up, put some flowers in my hair, designed a concept. I really enjoy taking photos and, playing around with different forms of creativity along with this podcast and with my blog. But I love playing in makeup, lighting, texture, different angles and stuff like that. And I use myself as the subject quite often. And I would love to have more muses and create looks and just grasp a vibe. I just really love doing it. So I did that, and those photos will be posted on my Instagram, Rissa SOFAR, on Tuesday if you are curious to see the end result. I also, went on a really nice hike at this place called Carriage Trail in Redlands, California. It's a very, very easy, beautiful hike. It's like a man-made wetland, like a marsh that they're trying to preserve, a lot of like animals and mallard ducks and amphibians. And it was a very, very beautiful nature walk ride. I was also on TikTok a lot this weekend.
I don't want to argue. I just want some clarity as to why you're calling me with your girlfriend.
TikTok, honey, yes, 33 years old on TikTok, but I don't give a damn. I have a lot of fun. Like, that is such a creator space and a place to really get to know yourself in that realm, and just it's really inspiring, actually. There's a lot of fucking creative ass people out there. So I've been on that and getting inspired through that. Follow me on TikTok, Rissa SOFAR, if you're curious to see what I've been up to. So yeah, that's been about the gist of it. So Aquarius, that is what I am. So on today's show, I have a very special guest with Culture Fuzz. As you may or may not know, Culture Fuzz is all about bridging the gap to people, places, products, and ideas that's meant to make a quality difference in your life while also bringing awareness to smaller brands and platforms. And this guest, I am so excited. Love her to bits and pieces. I've known her for years, like a really long time. We worked in a corporate setting before. We worked at a law office. She was an administrative assistant. I was being hired, I believe, to take her place because she was getting promoted. We both realized very quickly that we're stoners and instantly bonded. And ever since then, we've always kept in touch. And seeing her growth has been so inspiring, so phenomenal, just so beautiful that I had to invite her onto the show and talk about her journey. She went from working corporate full time to being a full-blown yoga instructor. And she, I believe, teaches vinyasa. She says it in the interview. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but really excited to have her on. This is a 2-hour conversation, just super compelling, super deep. And I want to thank Grace again for the unapologetic vulnerability that she showed on this show. She shared a story with us, with the Culture Fuzz family, so that others would define as very difficult. And I'm always humbled and insanely grateful when people use my platform to facilitate these stories or facilitate these feelings, because owning your story, whatever that trauma is, good, bad, whatever's going on in your life, is a way to get your power back and to take control of the narrative and your identity and the story that you decide to subscribe to. So creating this platform is exactly what I wanted, exactly what happened with Grace. That's exactly why I created this platform. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to thank her again for her grace, the beauty within that moment. You guys will definitely hear what I'm talking about. It's near the end of the conversation where, she opens up and she shares a journey with us and how she's able to cope with it and heal from it and learn from it. And I know that there's going to be somebody out there that's listening to this that is going to get a lot of resolve, or get a seed planted, or just know that there are other ways to survive and take control of your story. It's such a powerful thing. So I just want to say thanks again to Grace. And without further ado, because I'm a yakety yacker, here is the interview with Grace Lorenzo, yoga instructor. Miss Grace Lorenzo, welcome to the show, my friend.
What up? Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be sharing this time with you. So thank you, actually.
Oh my gosh, it's like overdue, to be honest. It's like completely overdue. I just wanted to let my listeners know that we go way back. We've known each other for quite a handful of years now.
I was just thinking about time. Well, no, it wasn't the first time, but we met in an office environment. And I wouldn't even say I was senior, but I was just training you. So we were like peer level, but I still remember being charged with taking you out on your first lunch with the company.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Just to put it in perspective, nowadays when, you can go to the dispensary and get whatever you want. Here, we go out for lunch and then we're driving around let's smoke a blunt.
It was great because it's okay, working in an office environment. So for those who may not know, I definitely indulge in the flower, no shame in my game. And when you're working in office environments, you can't just put yourself out there. You can't just be hey, oh, I'm gonna go smoke a doobie on my lunch. You have to be super discreet. So throughout conversation, she had said enough stoner shit where I was do you smoke? And she's yeah, you we both caught that vibe of saying some really high shit right now. So and it's oh my God, yeah. So once we discovered that, we're just we just magnets to each other. So she took me on my lunch and then we're yeah, let's just take a couple hits. It was great. It was a great memory, great bonding. I forgot all about that.
One of the things that really have made its mark in my mind, because I think about, where I am now, it's I'm definitely not going to go out driving around smoking a blunt. Maybe it's a little bit more accepted now, but I'm not going to do that.
Yes, back then it was we had to be more stealthy.
No shame. Again, no shame in the game, but
Grace was an administrative assistant at the time. She was training me to be an administrative assistant. We were working for a law office. And the reason why I wanted to have Grace on the show is because the trajectory of her life, or her life path, it just had a 180. It just completely went from corporate office to yoga instructor, eating, breathing, sleeping yoga. And it's been incredible watching you blossom into this new, just very in touch with yourself, extremely rooted, and I always felt I saw bits and parts of that while we were working at the law office, because you were very into your health and working out and very cognizant of your eating. But what made you make that decision to take that full leap into becoming a yoga instructor?
So, it wasn't, while it may seem like it was a 180, there were many, many steps and, along the way. So I always had that interest in yoga, but in as far as like teaching it, it was, I remember thinking like, this is all for the wrong reasons. Not at the time, but you know, obviously in hindsight. So, oh, I'm going to be a yoga teacher. That's awesome. It's so cool, right? Like it's so hot right now. And it's, again, completely for the wrong reasons. But then after, you know, we met and then I moved to another job, which was another, it was corporate, but it was a little bit more like artsy. You know, it was in a design firm, so there was a little bit um, freedom there, and I was able to kind of look more into, you know, my more creative side. And then I think that kind of segued into my next job because I left that job to go into another office job. And by that time, it really landed on me like, you know, there's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And
Yes.
it was just one of those, right? And so it was one of those moments. I landed the job and I was really heavy into my practice. Thought of teaching came up again, and I'm like, well, why not go for it? And I went for it thinking I don't want to teach. I just want to learn more because I'm just so into yoga. And after I finished my first training, I'm like, I got to keep doing this. So I signed up for my next training. After I did my next training, the day after, I mean, talk about the universe talking to you. The day after I graduated from that program, I had a teacher who reached out to me, hey, I'm sick. I need a sub. Okay, I could do it.
Yeah.
In my mind, because I'm like, I just graduated from this program. But anyway, yeah, there's going to be trips and falls along the way. It was not the greatest first class, but I mean, students were appreciative. They were still able to flow. And I was
What was
just
that first class like? I'm curious. What was that first class like? Like you're kind of like teetering with the thought of teaching, and then the universe. I love the universe is so good for that, where they're just like gives you that push into the deep end. What was that like for you? Like having to tap into that energy and you're like, okay, I'm a teacher now. Like what went through your mind during that first class?
I mean, so many nerves because there's a lot of like the imposter syndrome. Even though I did all this training, am I really worthy to be in this space right now? But
Yeah.
I did all this training to be in this space, and I may as well, you know, use the tools and skills that I've built up to. And it was a beginners class, which a lot of people think is like, oh, beginners, it's easy to teach. I find it even to this day right now, it's hard. It's so hard to teach beginners because it's great to have people come in with like a fresh mind. But
Yeah.
then it's easy for me, like, all right, get into a down dog where I'm like, what's a down dog? Then I'm like, oh, okay, so I have to reteach it. But at that time, it kind of worked to my advantage because like I was green. Most of the people there were green. And while I was not maybe the style that they were looking for or expecting at the
Mm.
time, at the very least, they left feeling grateful that, hey, at least I was guided by someone. I mean, I didn't tell them like, hey, this is my first class, everyone.
Right, right, right.
uh, but first one, it lit the fire in me. Like, even though it wasn't perfect, I'm like, I'm like, oh, I did it. I fucking did it. Like, this is great. And I remember going home, boyfriend at the time, who is now my fiance,
Oh,
him being
yay.
like, I know, yay. Him, just, you know, being proud and very supportive.
Yeah.
And as it kept going on, people kept asking me, oh, can you sub this? Can you sub that? And then it came to a point where I was using my vacation time at my job
Mm-hmm.
to get time off so I can sub classes.
Uh-huh.
And that became a common occurrence to the point where, like, I'm running out of vacation time, y'all.
Right, right.
And, you know, people are actually asking me to take on classes on the regular schedule, no longer being a sub. And with one studio, because I was working full time, I noted, I'm like, well, you don't have any really early classes. Why don't you have a really early classes for, you know, some of those folks who do work corporate jobs that can't start a class at 6 or 6:30? So they gave me that opportunity, and that blossomed. And it just came to a point where I'm like, I really felt like, okay, I hear the message. Like, this is my calling. And it was also one, me taking the step, but also the universe really giving me the shove because
Yeah.
my supervisor, my manager at the time, they pulled me into the office and they're like, we love you. Please, we love you. We love you to stay. But we get the sense that you don't want to stay. I'm like,
Okay.
oh, is it that obvious?
Yeah.
And,
It's like, damn. Like,
so, and not to, and I was fortunate that I had this support from them, and they said,
right.
um, don't take this as we're firing you, but consider this as us giving you the little push that
Yeah.
you need. Um, and if for some reason you don't feel like, doing what you're doing right now, yoga isn't going to fit for you, just please come back. We'll have you
Wow.
in another role. I'm like, okay, sweet. 3 years later, no, this will be 4 years later now. I haven't gone back.
That's
Um,
incredible, Grace. Wow.
yeah. So, and from the coop, I mean, I knew right then, I'm like, okay, this is a hustle. And something that I've been taught is like, yeah, it may feel good to make your own schedule. It is a hustle. And what isn't a hustle, right? But it was just kind of switching my perspective as to how I need to be more self-enterprising now, how I need to show up for myself fully if I do want to make this more successful and sustainable for me. And while this this past year has been the most challenging as far as that, it has granted me more clarity as to what is essential, what matters, and how much further I could adjust my lifestyle so that I could, make this or have this be, as sustainable and supportive for what nourishes me. And I mean, talk just breathing easier, just knowing that I have found like my place. Like this is where I'm meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Can you elaborate a little on what you found to be essential to you during this time?
It's a lot of it has just been mostly my lifestyle. When I'm working a corporate job, I was able to afford a little bit more. I was able to go travel a little bit more, maybe, and all the serums and the makeup, all the things
Girl.
that kind of got me. And having switched this my profession, really weighing what does matter. Like, okay, is it worth me going out to dinner for the fifth time this week?
Mm,
Or and if it's like taking more of my resources and for my bank account or more of my resources like energy just so I can feed like this one habit or this one part of my lifestyle that I've grown so accustomed to. And so when I start to think like, well, does it really matter if my current work isn't going to support that in like meaningful way for me to, feel like um, I guess feelings of worthiness do come in too. It's like, am I worthy of this? Am I worthy of that? Um,
mm-hmm.
and that's actually something that I've been going through too. I'm actually kind of going off in a tangent, but
I love it.
before I
No,
do so,
yes. No, no, I
yeah.
love this tangent because no, this is the part you're kind of already leading the conversation to where I want it to go in terms of like, because this year I've learned more about myself than I have probably in the past 3 to 4 years. Like it's really incredible. And I love to hear more about the self-worth story that you're kind of like dealing with right now. Like what kind of bubbled to the surface as you're trying to do all this self-awareness in terms of going inside, when you're having these discussions, self-discussions about like, well, I can't afford this, because my lifestyle, requires this, so I have to make this compromise. It forces you to ask what's important in your life. And it's interesting to hear that you're kind of tying it to the self-worth, and it's like how did that come about? How did that connection come about?
So my whole self worth work really came from, and I think at least bringing awareness to it and acknowledging it came from working a lot more as a yoga instructor. Um, First, getting used to, being in this industry, and it's kind of weird calling it an industry, but that's kind of what it is.
It's just industry terms, I guess.
Yeah, I know, right? I was able to like hone my craft, take on more trainings. I do at least one training per year, just so it's good. It's just good to have
Right.
your tools sharpened, and even I just love learning more what I can incorporate more. But allowing everything to marry together and being able to share that with others, having that land with people, and then building a community, then having people say like, "Oh my God, that was great," and then getting used to the verbal validation, getting used to the visual validation of people actually coming to your class and having it packed and full. Like, yes, this shows me that I am an amazing teacher. But then what happens on those days when it doesn't happen? And it doesn't have anything to do with me. And we always, and it's not always about us. And that's the rabbit hole I get into is, there were 38 people instead of 42 people in class today. What? Oh my God. Like, maybe not as drastic as that, but too along those same lines. And then, or after class, if no one says anything, like, oh my God, no one said how great of a class it was,
Right.
And it's really kind of arrogant, not being able to get that. But it all really boils down to self-worth, and it's just starting, something that I'm trying to dig deep a lot more with my therapist. And as a healer, I know firsthand, like, healers need to heal, and they need to heal themselves. And I'm so happy. I've been shopping around for therapists right now, and like, it's awesome how we can talk openly about therapy now.
Isn't that amazing? Like, yes.
I know.
Like, people don't understand. Like, me and Grace come from a time where like this was not okay. Like, talking about therapy and like mental health was like frowned upon.
But now it's, everyone shares like, dude, you know what my therapist said? I'm like, girl, tell me what your therapist said.
Right. Right. We used to compare trauma stories. That's how we bonded back in the day. It's like, well, I used to get my ass beat with the belt. Well, my mom used a wire hanger, and we used to think that shit was funny. It's crazy now how it's changed.
It all kind of comes back to, or at least for me, like how I use humor as a defense tool, or like self-deprecation. Like, that was a huge thing, and that's one thing that I'm really trying to take myself away from, is even though I may feel like self-deprecation, I'm just being funny, but is that really serving me? Like, because then to some degree I'm believing it.
Right.
It's just my perspective. But in the way of, again, feeling worthy is, just getting down that rabbit hole, and where does that stem from? And so I think just like going way back to the question is like, how am I grappling with that? It's a lot of work on my, while I'm able to in class, encourage others, in ways of thinking. Apart from that, I know within myself, like, I say these things because I know I need to say them. And that's kind of how I see my classes too, is before I step in, like how I'm planning it, it's like, okay, what is the message that I want to send out? And if there's nothing that's really coming to mind, then I'm like, how am I feeling? And it has to be an honest answer. And it's like when you're asking a friend, it's like, oh, how are you? And, going back to the whole mental health, sometimes we're just so accustomed, like, yeah, everything's fine. But I love how, and I'm prepared too. I have to be prepared too. Is like when I do ask, I have to be prepared for the answer, and anyone should be prepared, because, I would encourage people, and also myself, just to be completely honest, because that's how healing begins. Is be able to identify it, acknowledge it, give it a name, so that way we know how to deal with it. And so, just asking myself honestly, like, how am I feeling? And even if I'm feeling fine, how can I center that around, a yoga class? So just being really honest with yourself. We hear this word a lot, authentic, being authentic with yourself. I I it's I think it's just thrown around. That word's thrown around a lot. I think I use it very judiciously, because it's like the word literally. How people kind of say like literally a lot, and so
Yeah.
um, very
Guilty.
aware when I say, yeah. I mean, I'm no saint. I it's hard because just how we've all been raised to, we've all been conditioned in one way or another, and maybe it's also capitalistic ways of thinking. It's like, oh, you need this so you feel better. But yoga, has definitely been something that's been very grounding to be more aware of whether it's how I breathe or my whole thing is response or reaction. What's the difference? Am I responding or reacting? And how's that maybe drawn from, how I feel worthy, or how I treat myself as being worthy, so it's much work, but journey, what I have been able to peel back has been nothing short of amazing. And just being here right now, it just, speaks so much volumes to that.
So like the self-help journey industry, it is now an industry, has kind of like, I feel like it's become a little bit difficult to sift through. And I feel like a lot of people are hearing a lot of the same things. It's like, oh, when you need to do the self work, we suggest doing things like journaling, doing yoga, meditation. Like, I always feel like it's like common 4 to 5 things that people should really do. And it's like, I feel like people probably get tired of hearing it, or they don't understand how to unlock those tools in a way that benefits them. How can you describe, or can you help some listeners who have probably never tapped into this before, with 2020 happening? I know a lot of spiritual babies woke up. Like, I know a lot of people were like, what do I do with all of this? And I really, what's the word, emphasize and almost like over exaggerate like how phenomenal yoga is to help kind of uh, um, reel back, or like gain a little bit more control over a lot of these new emotions that people are feeling. How can you describe to beginners how yoga can really help them in this department? Like what things they can focus on aside from the vanity portion or just the physical portion of it?
And this will segue to a really important point, but again, before I go into another tangent, as
Okay,
far
these tangents
as
are awesome. Keep going on them, girl.
okay, well, I mean, put your pants on. It's gonna get
Go get your water,
or
guys.
seatbelt. I don't know.
Go get a snack.
Go get your water. Um, when I think about yoga and the actual practice, and most of us come to yoga because of the physical practice. It's not so much, I'm going to pick up the Bhagavad Gita and then open it up. It's like, hey, they're talking about yoga in this book. I'm going to see about what this yoga thing is, right? So yoga really starts with the gross body, how I move, how I breathe, or, how each of us move and breathe. I recently had someone very brand new to yoga, green. And while she was moving through the practice, I'm totally unfamiliar with it. As long as, I kept cueing the breath and the movement, being guided by that, she left feeling like, I have no idea what the fuck I just did to my body, but I feel amazing, right? And that kind of like sums it up, because it's like sometimes we don't even know, but once you feel it in your body, and I sometimes, or not sometimes, but especially with a beginner class, I'll over cue, because there are certain, like, you want to keep your body safe. So really the best yoga pose is one, to be the yoga pose. I'll get into that a little bit. But also, can you breathe? Can you sit in it? Can you be conscious with it? If you can be present with it, then you're doing it right. If you're holding the pose and then all of a sudden you're just thinking like, I need to get out of it, that's when the pose starts working for you. And that's something that we hear a lot sometimes too. And it's true, because it helps us to really explore where our limits are, where our boundaries are, whether it's in mind or body. Your mind will quit before your body does. And if, say, I'm holding like a warrior pose for a minute, and if my mind keeps saying like, this is uncomfortable, get out, get out, get out, then you're going to get out. But if you could just shut down, not so much like, quieting the mind. Well, that's what you are. You're quieting the mind, but not attaching yourself to the thoughts. So as long, if the thought says, if your thought goes, I can't do it, observe it, but not like attached to it, then your body be like, oh no, I got this, right?
I love that.
And so you can really, so you can really sit with it. And this tangent is, I feel like it's just really important, and it, especially 2020, really bringing this up is the access to this. You mentioned that so many people are now starting to come up with, self-help, mental health, body health, and all that, and I love it. And also, what came up during this time is, like, the shutdown with COVID, whatever, if you just took better care of yourselves, then, COVID wouldn't be a thing. That access to some of these communities, they don't have that. Like, if you tell someone, eat organic vegetables, like, okay, maybe in Venice or Santa Monica, but then you go, to these marginalized communities, they don't have that access. And, for me, what's really important, especially for mental health, especially for just like overall wellness, is be able to make sure people have access to this, that they aren't marginalized from this, and everyone's inclusive. There's more equity, just being able to share that with them. And I think this is, it's such an important point, because we can't keep talking about how we're all in the same boat.
Right. Right.
Working with different resources, and a lot of those resources are super limited. And I'm, again, I say this many, many times, I'm no saint, but I work with a lot of what I'm starting to learn right now. And it was one of the things that I really focused on one of my final projects for my certification, was how to bring access, especially for kids, and that's where a lot of the wounding comes in. Like, for example, my whole self-worth, discovering it with my therapist, like, hey, this is deep-rooted shit. This thinking, like, think back to childhood. Like, this is something that you may have carried from childhood. Start them young. Start these kids young. Even adults. I only took on my practice when I started, when I was, maybe 24, 25?
Right.
Maybe?
Yeah,
So,
I was
in
my life too.
later.
I was like, had I had access to this when I was younger, like, holy shit, or like known about it, like, I feel like things would, yeah.
Yeah. So, but now that being more informed and better informed, we do these, like, we have podcasts to, share this information. We have platforms that we can share this information to, like, spreading it out. And if an algorithm will prevent your reach, then whatever. Just keep doing you, right?
Right. You gotta seek the answer sometimes too. And that's a lot with having to do with inspired action. Like, it's like a combination of putting it out there, but also going after it too, like showing the universe that's what you want. But I want to go back to like the yoga with kids, because I do remember seeing you posting, working with kids a lot, going to the classroom. What's it like working with kids that young? Like, this is like preschool, kindergarten. Like, what's the age range that you worked with, and what was it like?
So this was actually part of, I guess, my thesis, if you will, my yoga thesis, final project.
Okay.
But actually teaching the kids, that was putting it in action. So what I did for, I guess, my report thesis was just to write about it, what my plans were to, and, even, thinking about it now, at the time when I did my project, I had no intention on teaching kids. Like, I didn't want to do that. But then just how everything came together with my project, like, oh, I guess this is what I want to do. And the more research and the more work that I did to it, then that's when it really landed on me. We get so wound up in yoga doing the poses. Once you do training, or once you learn more about it, it's like, oh, yoga is more than that. You learn so much on the mat, you carry that with you off the mat. And there's everything you can learn, like the sutras. Again, the Bhagavad Gita. You can read, so many of the spiritual texts. But through all that, that, what I learned on the mat, I need to put that into action. And part of that action is also social justice. That's also karma yoga, which is, also being of service. And, it's all marrying that together. And so my sister-in-law, she teaches, or she used to teach at the school over in South Central. She was a third grade teacher. I was telling her about my project, and she was telling me how a lot of the kids that she teaches, the trauma that they go through is crazy. I mean, she would tell me, like there's this one kid, he didn't really have he would just, at the very early mornings, like he would just go around the school, like 5 a.m., starting 5 a.m., just waiting for the school to open. I mean, there were other stories, but, I told her just, well, this is what I'm doing, kind of, going into like the trauma-informed realm. My venture into trauma-informed was more about helping to address, some of the unresolved trauma that I experienced. Translating that for kids, that was a totally different story, because their mindset and, taking yoga class is a lot different than from an adult. And I hadn't done any training to do kids yoga, but I'm like, F it, I'll just do it. And again, more research, more being within the space to learn more about, okay, how are these kids going to react? But I mean, they were absolute sponges. Like, they were so excited. I mean, even after class, I mean, I framed the class as a trauma-informed class, but geared for kids. So, it wasn't like all these grounding techniques. I made it fun so that way it was able to land with them. But
sure.
But I mean, she says that even kids to these days, in her past classes, obviously not last year, but when she was able to see the kids, she would say the kids still ask about you, like they still want you to. So, that I didn't think that I was expecting, but just actually hearing that, I'm like, oh, okay. And the more I did it, the more fulfilled it felt. Like this is actually everything that I've been talking about.
Yeah.
And again, it's yoga in action, or what they say is yoga is skill in action, is the saying. And so this is the skill that I learned putting into action. And the last time I met with them was actually through Zoom class. It was at the end of last year. And this was about the time when the riots were happening. Mm-hmm. And before class, any trauma-informed class, I kind of go with like a grounding exercise. And first a check-in exercise, actually. It's a check-in exercise. And I ask everyone, it's like, okay, how are you doing? The first kid who went, I could not stop crying. Luckily, it was over Zoom. They probably couldn't see me crying, but just hearing all their concerns, because, they're honest. Kids will be honest with you.
Oh, yes.
Right? Oh, true or false sometimes, but no, it's all good.
It's like, you want a good accountability partner? Be around a kid.
It's like, oh, auntie, you're going to eat that again? Like,
right. It's like, first of all, no one asked you to read me, but you're right.
Shut up, turn around.
Exactly.
You want Santa to give you a present this year? You know what's best for you. They'll be honest. And, these kids were honest when I asked them, like, how are you? And, they were scared. They, and, a lot of them was like, I'm afraid because, the cops are doing these, such bad things, and I'm afraid that they'll do bad things to me because I look like him, or I look like her.
Wow.
Or so it was really, really heavy to actually, and again, be prepared when you ask someone how you are doing.
Right.
And while I thought that I was prepared for that, I might not have been fully prepared. But I mean, I was there to listen, and I mean, it really. I mean, again, another moment that reminded me, like, this is why you're here. Like, this is maybe not just for kids, but also just like being able to hold space for those who just need to talk or who just need to be witness. That's big. Just being witness.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like we have to be grateful for those moments and reflect on, like, I'm here at this moment having this conversation with these children because I'm ready to have this conversation. Like, I've developed myself enough to hold space for this, because it's like, that's heavy. And then on top of that, it's like, I don't think we give kids enough credit or even take them as seriously as they need to be taken sometimes, in terms of like, they feel like, they really do feel. They may not be able to express it or articulate it in a way that like holds volume. Like, I was watching this one mom, she has this channel, like her son has autism, and she made a really, really good point. She's like, you have to understand that kids don't always necessarily know how to communicate that they're feeling anxiety. They might say, I have a stomach ache, or they might say, I have a headache, but they really may not be sick. They just might actually be feeling the physical effects of anxiousness. And it's like, holy shit. Like, you don't think about that type of stuff. So it's amazing and it's phenomenal that you do the work that you do, and you give that space for even the little ones, who need that, who I don't think, thinking about it now, like, that's why I appreciate these conversations, because I have these revelations of like, yeah, like, never really even thought about it like that. Like, and those little creatures, like, they really are phenomenal. Is there like a kid, or is there like a certain situation that when you worked with these children that really like stuck out to you and you still kind of hold on to this day, aside from like that conversation? I know that was like a big one, but is there like a super profound moment?
It was maybe a couple years ago, and it was the very last class that I was teaching with these folks or with these kids, and it was my first time kind of testing out meditation with them. From up until this point, I was just doing straight up yoga, nothing further than that. But it was the very last class, and I just thought, like, I'm gonna try meditation with them. And I was like,
I'm just feeling it. I'm gonna ride away. We're gonna see what happens.
I'm feeling it, and then as I'm thinking, I'm like, struggle with meditation. I'm like, how am I? I've never taught kids how to meditate before. I'm like, first time for anything, right? For everything. So I had them do a couple different meditations. The first one was a walking meditation, and I just had them, okay, you're just gonna walk around the classroom, just kind of, steady gaze, and even this is meditation. That was a fail. People were just like kind of like purposely bumping into each other, like I'm like, okay, well, this isn't working. The next one, and this one was the one that landed, was okay. So you're just going to sit back to back with someone, and you're just going to sit cross-legged and eyes closed or soft gaze, and you're just going to breathe with them, like, as you feel someone's back against yours, you can feel the rise and the fall as you breathe. And so I just said, just focus on that. And I just remember looking around the room, and that was the one that all the kids were just like,
that's dope.
Like, wow. And the thank you letters I got after that, that really, that touched me so much. And some of them, a lot of them too, English is their second language.
Okay.
And and even if they weren't able to really write it out fully in this letter, just the amount of happy faces or hearts, I mean, that was deeply, like, I felt that. I'm like, it's okay. I have no idea what you're saying, but I mean, I feel like you're grateful. And not that, maybe their teacher put them up to it or what, but like just reading some of these letters, it felt so genuine and just so pure. And I just remember thinking then, like, kids, they are our greatest. They are great teachers. So as
Oh
long as you
yeah.
have the patience and the ear to listen, like,
Right.
I think we know better now because we're more in control of maybe our emotions or how we can dictate our lives because we're older now, and again, we know better. You
Right.
kids, well, you don't know what's in it for you, but then we forget so much. Um, and it's probably how I came back to yoga was because I remember being a kid, there was a lot of creativity and there was a lot of like, oh, I really want to be a doctor. And then growing up, like, oh, well, I want to go into art, but then I also still want to be a doctor. So what really landed with me was stop attaching to the profession. Instead of attaching yourself to the profession, what's the action behind the profession? So if growing up, I'm like, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a doctor, and then all of a sudden I'm not a doctor, then that just like, oh, well, what am I going to do now? I'm going to go work in the office. Little did I know, and I found a different way of healing through yoga, through acupressure, through meditation, through guidance, and it was then I'm like, I am living my childhood dream just in a different capacity,
That's
a different
incredible.
profession.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And like to have the open-mindedness, like that, like let's just like marinate on that for a second, listeners. Like you're still doing what you set out to do. It's just not exactly how you pictured it. And even highlighting the fact that you're like, it's the action behind it. It's the why. It's the purpose. Like it's all still very much aligned with your truth. It may not be like the white coat doctor that everyone might envision, when they grow up or whatever, but you're still healing people. And that's the whole point. And that's what a doctor does. It's you're
Mm-hmm.
healing people. You're giving like people hope, you're giving people alternate perspective. And like the beautiful thing about yoga, like what I love so much about yoga, I can't even remember the first class that I took. Like I've been doing it so much, but like it forces you, really, really forces you to go inside of yourself. And like the way that you were breaking it down, it was such like great reminders, and it made me nostalgic because I was obsessed with going to, I'm sure you're familiar with the studio on Santa Monica and Second, the Power Yoga Studio.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like that's where I really, really fell in love with yoga, was through those teachers in that studio. Like, I guess, like, I don't know if the majority of those teachers like studied abroad or what, but every single one was very similar in their teachings of what you talk about. And just hearing it was just like a great refresher. Like, it's like not subscribing to the thought of like, I can't hold the pose, like I'm getting tired, I'm getting wobbly. And of course, showing yourself love. If you got to get into child's pose, get into child's pose. But like, it's also challenging yourself, like, okay, is it really just this thought, or am I really truly tired and fatigued? And then just like chewing on that while being in the pose, it was some really intense stuff. And I played sports for years. Like I was like a hardcore basketball player. And like it wasn't until yoga that I was like, damn, like not even throughout all of my years as an athlete did I get this type of like connection with my body. I couldn't even touch my
Mm-hmm.
toes playing sports. It wasn't until I did yoga that I'm like, I can finally touch my toes. Like that's insane. So
Yeah.
it's a very, very incredible practice. And I love the versatility. I love the different types. Do you teach the hot yoga? Is that Bikram yoga?
I don't teach Bikram, but I do teach in a hot yoga studio, but it's not the Bikram sequence. So I did do Bikram once. I wouldn't say I did it because I probably went through halfway through the class. First of all, I showed up incredibly overdressed.
What's
And I walked in, I'm like,
overdressed?
for Bikram, walked in thinking like, okay, hot yoga class, or I've done hot yoga before, so I'm wearing pants, I'm wearing a tank top,
Yeah.
walk in like, oh, booty shorts and bra, like bathing suits essentially. I'm like,
Got it.
and which is not uncommon, that's
Right,
just
right.
how it is. But then for me, newbie, to Bikram, I'm like, this isn't your normal hot yoga class. I mean, yeah, because I couldn't, I mean, I don't know what it was, but I just couldn't hack it for the first half. And then I remember walking out, and the person at the front desk was like, it's okay, everyone, this happens to everyone's first time. Like, okay, I think I'm just going to go now.
Yeah.
And this is a long time. I mean, this is a while back before I even knew, just the, shit show that Bikram is. We won't get into that, but yeah, there's that.
Wait, that's news to me. Wait, is there like a controversy with Bikram?
So, watch. I think it's on. Should still be on Netflix. It's just look up Bikram. There's more to the title, but it's yeah, he is not a good person. Not a good guy.
Is it like the guy that invented like hot yoga or something, or?
He would like to think that maybe not the hot, maybe not the hot aspect of it, but I like to take credit for the sequence that he created, but really he got it from his guru.
Got it.
And marketed, to himself. He added the hot yoga aspect to it. But you watch it, learn more about him. Not a good guy.
Yeah, I was just like, wait, hold on, record scratch. I haven't heard that. Yeah, so I'll investigate that.
There's a lot more. I'm not going to say too much.
Yeah.
Because I mean, trigger warning. A lot of trigger warnings there, but give it a goog. Give it a goog, and report back to me. Let me know what you think. But yeah, Bikram. That's a different or different type. So yeah, there's different styles. And as far as like hot yoga, different yoga studios will have heated rooms, and they'll do their own flows. Like teacher will have their own license to create their own flows. So that's based in vinyasa. So one breath per movement, moving with your breath and movement. Vinyasa, Ashtanga is much more of an athletic practice. Vinyasa is still an athletic practice, but Ashtanga, that's also another set of poses and sequences it follows, much like Bikram that has a set sequence. Ashtanga has a set sequence.
So I'm wondering if Ashtanga is the one that I practice. Like I just called it power yoga because I would be sweating. It was like a 90-minute, like the ones on Santa Monica and Second. It was always like a 90-minute class, and I would be sweating, like drenched. And it was like a sequence. It was like with the one breath, and you were like going. It was like nonstop. It was like pose after pose after pose.
That was likely vinyasa. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, well, so vinyasa, you'll move. There are set sequences in like a regular vinyasa class, and it's like you could, like there's a sun salutation A, sun salutation B. Those are set sequences, but in between that, usually teachers like to like throw in like holds or their own creative flows. That's where creativity comes into play for me. Is just like being able to create creative flows, but also. And this is like a tug and pull too. It's just like, how do I honor the lineage of the practice while not feeling like I'm appropriating it? Which, I know to some degree I am. And that's a lot for me because I came into this practice and like, yeah, this is amazing. And then with so much awareness coming around with like, culturally appropriating aspects of one's culture and then profiting over it. Like where do I draw the line, or how is that coming up for me? And if this is what I want to do, how can I still be true to myself, but also honor where this came from? And I mean, it's a lot. Just being able to be inclusive too, and I think that's where inclusivity comes too. Because you Google yoga, a lot of the models that you see aren't of South Asian descent. Or any type of ethnic background. So all these nuances are really starting to come to light. Awesome, but also at the same time, it's like, ooh, I've been complicit in this for sure.
Right? Yeah. I feel you. Like it's like same. It's like damn. Like I just thought I was enjoying a practice, but it's like the same as you. Like. Me starting to burn sage or, like tarot cards, like getting into all the crystals and stuff like that. It's like this balance in this line and like hearing, other people who come from that lineage of like, it's cultural appropriation, but it's like, but I just like really love the practice and it helps me and it heals. And it's like no respect. Like, what do I do? Do I at you? Like, tell me what to do. Like, it's like, yeah, I feel you.
Sure. But yeah, it's as long as I think it really does come back to being inclusive or who you collaborate with too, because I'll see influencers and all that, and they may have great followings, and sometimes when I see some of the content, I'm like, oh man, this is in my mind. I'm like, this is wrong, and also is that even a pose? And a lot of people, they'll I see this with yoga influencers too. Like they'll hire contortion coaches so they can get super flexible.
Oh, wow.
And then
Get
it. Yeah, they'll like a lot of. I mean, I know someone who. I mean, she'll market herself as like, I'm a contortionist. Yoga, is like something else. Like, but she's still a yoga instructor, but she'll also say, I'm a contortionist. Whereas others like, I'm a yoga instructor, but then they are being trained under contortionists and not like
interesting.
Or someone else. Yeah, it's little things like that.
And I don't mean to like project my opinion, but I feel like that's cheating because like I remember taking yoga for months, and it's about enjoying the journey there. Like contortionist and like yoga, like I feel like it's like two different things in terms of like the goal. But I remember taking it for months and being the most flexible I had ever been, like being able to hold the poses so strongly, like being able to participate in all the twisty turny things. Like I remember like my friend coming to class and it was her first time, and she was like, bitch, I couldn't even do like a warrior one pose, and I see over there we're doing like, I don't know now, loop your arm backwards and like loop it through the other leg and bend forward. And I was like, I can actually do this. It took like 6 months to get here. In my head, I'm like, yeah, man. And like just reveling in the journey that it took to like get to that pose. And so like when I hear about like, oh wait, so they hire contortionist poses, bitch, you're a sham? Like what's going on? Like I can't relate. Like
no, I mean, because it's also like, well, then you made a point. It's like, contortionism and yoga, those are two different things. Like, again, yoga, we gravitate towards yoga because of, we started from the gross body, the physical body, forgetting that there are other things behind it that make it yoga. Yoga is, when you translate it needs to yoke to bring together. And so in different parts of your practice, that's what it's doing. But then to totally negate, maybe one doesn't want to learn about the philosophy or the spiritual aspect of it. I mean, okay, fine, but for a teacher to be maybe speaking out on certain issues and then telling them to stick with yoga. I mean, I've had that done before, like if I speak out openly about social issues that like, we really need to change this. And then someone was like, you better stick to yoga. I'm like, bitch, I am sticking to yoga.
First of all.
Because, I mean, even just the history of yoga, it was and still is political. It is. And like to think it back to the days when, the British colonized India and they were trying to, villain or what's the word I'm looking for?
Vilify,
I guess villainize is
condemn.
Vilify. Yeah, condemn yoga as being something as barbaric or whatever. But then Indians and yogis at the time, they used that as a way as their way to fight, to rebel against them, because it's like, nah, dude. And so they were essentially fighting against colonization that by doing yoga and so and I, every now and then I'll see this, maybe not just in a yoga pose or yoga post or influencer, or, it could be with, other influencers. The second that they start talking about subjects that may make some people uncomfortable, they're like, this is the work. This is all work. And whether it's yoga, whether it's cooking, food blogging, or podcasting, it's like, this is the work that needs to be done. Whether it's, it doesn't have to be political, but it can just be a way to connect and at the root of it all, just to understand.
Right.
You know, and in that understanding, that's we are being witnessed, we are being also validated, and in all that we can find healing. And really just knowing that, okay, my perceptions of self-worth are not in line with that, but as long as I, again, give it a name, understand it, if, you know, we share stories so that way someone can understand where I'm coming from, then that's where, you know, we can start to heal, because it's like, I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this journey. Whereas my journey may be different from theirs. At least I know that I'm not alone in feeling this. And again, a tangent that I have no idea where I came from.
No, I was gonna say, like, and nothing is by coincidence. This is why I'm very organic with my conversations on this show. Like, I write down talking points, I have people fill out questionnaires, but I only do that as like a skate or like a safety net in case there's ever a quiet moment. Like, my fear is that there will be dead silence for more than 5 seconds. So I'm always like ready to go. But like, I really appreciate the organic essence behind these conversations, and tangents are just like, I feel like tangents are people's way of unpacking their truth in real time. Like, it's just kind of like, this is like what's going on, and it's the most relatable shit. It is the most raw relatable shit. That's why I love tangents. Like, so please don't ever apologize, like, if you feel like you got to talk about stuff, that because it all connects, it all correlates, and it connects with you in that way, and like, you're connecting the dots, and like, people who do that are connecting the dots into how my question or my comment might be, you know, relating to that topic. So like, I appreciate that. I appreciate the vulnerability. And I was going to say, going back to you know, making sure that we have these conversations, because that's what doing the work is. I'm trying to find the book, because I had this conversation with Fresco on my last podcast. I'll have to find it. I'll put it in the description. But he's studying right now, like, people who experience like NDEs, like near-death experiences and stuff like that. And there's this one story that kind of stuck with him, when he told me about, I guess, a person had, you know, passed for a few minutes and had a connection with the afterlife, not the afterlife, but like what happens afterward. Like, he spoke with like a master, quote unquote, like, because I believe in reincarnation. This is just my belief, like, whatever people like want to believe in, but I do believe that we do come back in different forms so that we can continue to learn a lesson that we're supposed to learn. And there's levels to this shit, and then you like reach mastery to where you don't really need to reincarnate anymore, but you're guiding those souls that are reincarnating. Like, whether it's true or not, I love it, and I'm going with that. And it's a constant reminder that we have to keep like learning, you know what I'm saying? So this guy who had this connection with the master was saying, is like, our job is to learn the lessons and then teach and help others learn those lessons as well. And how we do that is by sharing our experiences, telling our stories, having these conversations on open platforms, you know, blogging about it, writing about it, teaching yoga. Like, there's so many ways that we can give back what was taught to us. And I think that's what our mission is: servitude. Our mission is like, as we heal, we can help to heal others. You know what I'm saying? So, and yoga is such a phenomenal practice for that. And I really feel like you have to constantly be in check with yourself and to help others define that for themselves. So like, it's like, so what do you do on days when you just cannot get it together and you know you have to teach a class?
Oh, man. I mean, I just, in moment, it's so easy, at least, I mean, for me, it's so easy for me to shut down. Like, well, and shut down, and I was talking openly about this recently, like, when I'm not sure if, like, am I shutting down, or is this self-care that I'm just giving myself a moment to be with myself? So it's
we have to
be
careful how we define self-care too, because a lot of people define procrastination and laziness as self-care. So it's kind of like, wait, is this even self-care? Like,
again, again,
Oh,
like,
same all the time. But now I just call it what it is. It's like I call it. I don't feel like doing it. Like this isn't even self care.
I'm calling it tomorrow. But
Exactly.
yeah, in those moments where I feel like I don't know if I'm shutting down or if I'm just being late or if this is a moment of self care. And if I know that I do have work to do, and not that it's a New Year's resolution, but it's more like a theme that I keep reminding myself of is just to, how am I putting on my oxygen mask first? How, and by doing so, how am I showing up for myself? Because, I show up for others, I show up for this, but then it just comes back to, am I showing up for myself? And then when I look at it that way, and then just boiling it down to just showing up, just, and, being able to do, it's like, hey, if I could do this with my friends, why can I just not do that for myself? And then, like, if I'm feeling like I want to do it, I have to give myself a moment just to kind of marinate on it and think about it, where is this coming from, right? Like, and lately, this is just an example. Lately, for me, it's like, okay, why don't I want to do this, right? And part of it, again, comes from, and maybe from that self-worth, is also truly afraid of success. Am I truly afraid to take on more, knowing that I can do more? And all coming back to, like, what is my purpose? Like, what am I doing? And, like, and further boiling it down, and it makes it seem like this is a really long, drawn out process, but really it happens like milliseconds, because it's
Right.
processing in my
Like
mind
it's
that
like
it's
yeah,
already.
yeah. It's like, guys, you have to think like how quickly we translate words and like how quickly our thoughts go. So yeah, this it sounds long, but it happens in the span of like milliseconds.
It does, really does. And after all the boiling of all these points in my mind, when it just seems like this is, I'm doing this for me. When I commit, it's like, oh, we're making this about ourselves, or we're doing this, our best self-interest. But really, when you start with yourself, then you're able to show up for so much more, for others. And coming back to putting on the oxygen mask, or just filling your cup first before you're able to, be able to share it, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
How many times have you heard that?
It hits
And being
different
able
every
to,
time.
right? It's different every time. And then when you hear coming out from someone else's mouth, like,
Yep.
yeah, it's like,
Yep.
okay, I hear you, universe. And yeah, it's just knowing that, or just fully being aware that, hey, this is what you asked for, right? And what are you going to do with it? I mean, just to, and maybe crassly, maybe not so crassly, but just a really, really kind of materialistic way of putting it. I still remember the thought crossing through my mind, like, I just want to be able to work in a space where all I can wear are yoga pants. And that was when I was still working in a corporate office, and I got what I wanted. I did. And now it's like, okay, I'm in yoga pants, I'm on the couch, I can get work done. But self-care tells me just to chill. But then, the more I sit with it, and the more I really allowing myself to feel, is like, am I feeling bad that I'm not being productive, or am I feeling like I should be? It's a lot of inner dialogue, but not fighting it. Like, don't fight it, acknowledge it, process it, rinse it out, breathe it out, and even if, and then at that moment, if I'm still feeling like unmotivated, and like, okay, well, I think I do need to take a step back, and it's just trying to find the balance, and that's huge. And I think that's my struggle right now, is just being able to know the balance of knowing when I can, even in my practice too, like, okay, I know I can sit deeper in my chair pose, but do I really want to, right? And it's the same thing. It's like, I put in more effort? I could probably put in more effort, but do I want to? Or am I saying in my mind, like, no, my hamstrings are a little tight. Maybe I don't want to do that too, you know? So am I making excuses? Or am I using those excuses as a way to, like, I'm taking care of myself? No, it's self-care, right? But it just comes back down to being honest. Be honest. Be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
How are you? Be honest.
Yeah.
I put in more effort. Be honest.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like, you know, we're so trained to be like, I'm fine, it's okay, like I'm strong, like I'm not supposed to show any weakness. And it's really funny because I'm so honest with myself now that I have to be very, very careful who my audience is when they ask me like, how are you? Because I'm so honest. I'll be like, I'm not feeling it today because blah blah blah, depression. And some people are just like, leave me on red because they're like, bitch, that's not what I was here for. And I was like, okay, yeah, I should have kept it in my journal. Like, I get it, you know? So like, it's like, I have to find that balance as well. And also being okay with telling others, like, it's like, I'm good, but also knowing on a deeper level, like I'm still working on something. It's like, I'm good. I know you're not the person to receive like my truth, but like, how do you like combat that or not combat that? Like, how do you like correlate that? Like, how do you, because there's a way to like connect with people on a surface level, when you have to like deal with people on an everyday level, you know, like there's certain levels that you can't necessarily, layers that you can't necessarily peel back because like the person you're talking to is not ready. I find myself battling with like, well, am I being a sham because I'm not being truthful with them? Or like, is it because they're not ready for that? Like, how do you go about dealing with your truth versus someone who may not be ready to receive your truth? You just like not fuck with them, or you're just like, okay, peace, love, and light. Like, how do you deal with that?
I mean, I also have to think about my past, depending on who I'm talking to. Like, I just have to think about how have past discussions gone with a certain individual, but also being aware of where I'm coming from too. I mean, sometimes at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember, like something happened with a friend. I felt like I need to vent about this, and so I called up a couple people, and the reaction or response I got from them was not really what I was expecting. And I just remember thinking, like, I feel like I've just been gaslit. Like I'm raw in my
I don't mean to
right
laugh.
now. I'm
Like,
mad, and I need, yeah, I know, I need someone to know. And so, like, when I talk, you know, call these friends, thinking like any friend, like any person who, you know, needs to vent, like I felt like I was venting. But you know, in hindsight, maybe it's like, well, was I venting, or maybe was I dumping to people or those who I thought maybe were prepared for this onslaught from me? And, you know, and so sometimes I just have to remind myself, like, are these individuals, you know, in a space ready to hear from me? And this could also be a discussion on consent, like calling up a friend, like, hey, do you have a minute to talk? Or, you know, and, but I mean, that friend too should be honest. Like, if I called up a friend, like, hey, you know, I'm just really riled up right now. Do you have a second to talk? If that friend is, you know, they have to be honest as well. Like, you know what, I'm not in the space right now. I'm sorry. Can we circle back to this later? Of course, not every back and forth is, you know, going to be that smooth. You know, I don't expect every friend to be like, okay, yeah, I'm mad, but it's fine. We'll talk later. You know, it's not,
right.
You know, I don't imagine every conversation being that smooth, but it's also just coming back to, you know, how we are able to show up, and, you know, just being honest. So what I'm trying to convey here is that, well, the question one more time.
How do you do? You're like the tangent. I think you answered it. To like be quite frank, it's like the question was, you know, how do you deal with being in your truth when people aren't necessarily ready to receive it or in that space? You know, it's because sometimes our truth isn't always positive. And like, there's a couple of things that like I want to emphasize that like I always find these core values in every conversation that I have, and I always repeat it to people. It's like, ask questions, journal, meditate, surround yourself with tribe. You know, all of the things that I said that like all of these self-help industries are just like super emphasizing and repeating. And it's like, because these are like the core things. It's like, okay, so what she was saying, such healthy communication, such healthy openness and vulnerability. And it's like, you have to build the people, you have to build your tribe, and you have to build that community of people who communicate in that way. So if that's the person that you want to be, or if that's the type of people you want to surround yourself with, first acknowledging that, defining that, you know, understanding that's what you want, and then being in that truth to where that's the type of people that you attract. Now that might mean you can no longer really connect with the current people that you're hanging around with in that way, because they're not going to be on the same track or the same mindset. So like when you're reflecting back, you're like, I don't know if I was venting or dumping. And that's an interesting thought, because it's like, well, what's the difference? Isn't venting dumping, but isn't it the same thing? But it's about how that person, how that audience is receiving you. You know, like you're showing up as this person of like, I'm frustrated, I need to let out steam. You know, like to me, venting is like, I'm fully and thoroughly aware of what's happening and what I need to do, but I'm still fucking pissed and I don't want to write in my journal. So I'm just going to like let you know what's going on and like feel free to say anything constructive. But other than that, like it's fine. And not a lot of people understand that sometimes you just need to listen. Like I'm not saying something to you for you to like read me or give me a whole therapy session. It's just like, I just need a friend. I just need someone to just listen and be there. Not a lot of people know how to do that, and that's okay. But it's just recognizing that about yourself, and then, you know, and then embodying that and being that person, and then trusting that you will eventually start to attract people like that in your life. You know what I'm saying? So it's like surrounding yourself with tribe, asking yourself those questions to understand yourself as that person who needs people like that in their life. So that's why it's like, I appreciate you sharing that story, because it's interesting to always go back and revisit people who revisit the people we were in those times. Because it's like, okay, well, was it really me acting that way, or was it just because I was starting to see things in a different way? You know what I'm saying? Or like just, like, so it's very interesting. But yeah, I think it just always goes back to like, you just need like-minded people, you need tribe. And I love the way how you were like, because I do that, where I'm like, I'm really not in the space right now to like receive this, and you deserve to have someone who is fully attentive to what they're saying. But right now, my cup is just not full enough to where I can give you that energy. Like, can we circle back? I do that. It used to be very hard, but now I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm like, listen, I know I'm being selfish in this moment, because I know as a result, you will get the benefits of me once I fix myself. And then we can revisit and rehash, you know? So that's amazing. And like, I think we should all strive to have relationships like that. Very open, very communicative, very not in your feelings, very not like taking it as it's about me. Like, you know what I'm saying? So like, I'm guilty of that too. Like, well, is it me? Does she just not want to be friends with me anymore? And I have to shut that down. Like, nah, bitch, like she just needs to go have some wine and like chill. Like, she'll be fine. Like, yeah. So
give her snacks, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we've been there. I get it. So it's just making sure that you're good, and like understanding that like the self-healing journey is selfish. Like, it's a selfish thing, and it's not bad, you know? Like, do you ever feel with deal with those feelings of like shame or guilt for choosing yourself?
Oh, I mean, it's ingrained because of, culturally ingrained.
Oh yeah.
Because within the Asian culture, we're a we work with community, we work for each other, we build each other up, and it's always, at least growing up, it's always kind of looked down upon when you kind of go off and take care of yourself and do your own thing, even if that means at the expense of the family or the collective, if you will. So it's hard to think that I'm doing this for myself, even if I know that I've done that with, the last time that really came up for that was when I left my last relationship. And the response from my family was just like, what are you doing? And I remember one comment from one person is like, it's not just your breakup, it's our breakup. I'm like,
First of all.
aw. You know? And I remember even like my mom, wanting to talk to me about it, like several different family members. But I still remember, like, and it's very interesting because I never really thought this of him, but my dad was the only person that I could really remember who was actually really accepting of it. Not that he was like, "Oh, good, you left him." It wasn't like that. It was more like, I respect that. Whereas my mom was like, "Oh, hell no." In so many words, he's like, "No." So,
the dynamics of our family are very similar. It's like my dad is very much that guy. Like, it's like, if it's good for you, if like there's a reason why you made this decision, and as long as you're happy, I'm happy. Like, my mother's usually the one who's got words.
my mom had, I mean, and I know they're working from, a good place, and that's also something that I have to be aware of, like, coming from a good place and also doing the best that they can with what they have, and having compassion for that, even if it doesn't align or even if it's sometimes problematic. But I mean, at the very least, it is all definitely coming from a good place.
Yes, it is.
But it really is. It does come up every now and then, because I have done so much work for myself that it's like, well, I mean, they may not approve or agree with it, but fuck it, I feel good. I mean, like, this is nourishing me. Like, this is good. I mean, I feel right. I mean, when I decided to be an art major, it's like, oh, how that's going to be practical for you? Like, well, I'm not producing art, but my creativity is still being translated into a different capacity. And so while maybe they may not recognize, like, oh, art major, whatever, I think they do recognize that I am in a better place. Like, they can see that in my attitude. They can see that how I carry myself, and whether that brings shame to the family or not, at the very least, I can tell that, like, all right, she's all right.
That's huge. That's huge. Of course,
there's still that little voice. Yeah, still that little voice. It's like, is this selfish? Am I bringing shame, or am I not thinking about the family when I do make this decision? At some point or another, when they see that, not just me, but with others, like when they see us, like, at least the older people or older generation, when they see us making decisions for ourselves and see us being happy in that, I think the conversation is starting to shift a little bit. Not so much as like, okay, keeping the family unit together, like no divorce or anything like that. But then when they're like, oh, no, they're much happier. So I love how the tides are turning, albeit, I mean, as slow as it needs to be, but as long as it continues to change and shift, the current is strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, it's like, I always commend, the ones who, because family is hard. Family is everything, like, and it's very difficult to, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, be the black sheep, or choose the road less traveled, or just choose the road that's like not supported, I guess, because it's your truth, what it's good for you, that you will be the best version of yourself for these people that you love in your life if you follow this path that may not necessarily be the path that they saw for you. So, like, in that regard, when I mean being selfish, be selfish in terms of what's best for you, what that looks like for you. And a lot of stories that I've heard, I've had enough conversations where, when it comes full circle, I had like Curtis King on the show, and he even said his dad was saying the same thing. Like, they saw the contentment, they saw the happiness, they saw like just the peace that they feel, they can see it. And then from that, they began to accept them and their choices in life, because it's like, okay, I can clearly see that you are happy. So, and in a way, it puts the family in this state of self-awareness of like, damn, maybe happiness is not what I thought it was supposed to mean, like, interesting. Yeah. So It's very profound and kind of cool, like how stuff like that goes full circle, and that we never stop being students, like ever, 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 like.
Mm,
And that's something that I want to.
absolutely not. And
Yeah. Go ahead.
oh no, there's speaking of acceptance, there was something that I saw recently. It was what force is greater than love? And there was something that I saw recently, um, going along what you said. Being accepting. Seeing every. Just seeing. We're so used to fitting the square peg into the circle hole, whatever. Forcing it, but then when we're able to see, like, being able to, find where you're fit and then feel like you fit, and it all kind of makes sense to others. And when you said that, that reminded me of something that I remember. Something that I saw was, what's the great force greater than love? And it's easy to think like, well, love is the greatest force and all that. And maybe it's not the greatest force or a force greater than love, but it's definitely a part of it. But it's acceptance, because just think about that could mean so many things, but I'm thinking about just acceptance of self, acceptance of a child who may even be considering or not considering, who identifies to another gender, or accepting, but there are so many other nuances. Like, okay, does that mean I'm going to be accepting of someone who harms me? No, won't get into the onion of that just now, but
Yeah.
just thinking about acceptance in the immediate form of, like, accepting one for who they are,
Yeah.
and seeing the happiness from that, and so and it yeah, I think that's also, again, kind of leads its ways to healing, because then you're also healing yourself, but also allowing that other person to heal too, because it's like, okay, I know that I'm loved for how I am, and
Yeah.
I don't have to force myself into any other role or mold,
Right.
to make you happy but miserable. So
Right. And that's
yeah.
not to say that, a lot of people get that acceptance. There are people who, have made their decisions on what their truths are and completely, get shunned from the family, or, no longer a part of the family. And to those people, I just want to say, like, I understand and I know what that feels like. And blood does not always necessarily mean family. Like, when you find like-minded people, when you find tribe, that can be your family. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like the beauty of having these genuine connections and sticking to your truth, is that you will always find like-minded people on your path. If you stay open enough, communicate enough, and stay vulnerable, you can absolutely build your own family, So, like, my heart goes out to those people. I feel it. I get it. That shit is hard. um Not a lot of parents are accepting of that. They're not accepting of our truths. And I commend the bravery and the commitment that you guys are holding towards yourself in just being in your truth, because that to me is still healing. And you will be able to pass that on. If you decide to have a family, you'll be able to pass that teaching on to your children and start to heal that generational trauma, like, yeah, like, and it just, it goes both ways, and we all have a decision, like, you can either be a victim or you can rise above it. You can either allow trauma to define you and be your story, or you can write a new one. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's everyone's
Absolutely.
trauma is different. Everyone's cards have been different, but it's really funny. I like make fun of myself. I'm like, because I say all of these things now, like, my friends like, you drop gems. I'm like, these are literally all the fucking cat posters that I would see, like, in the third grade, fourth grade. And, like, I was like, oh, they weren't just pulling this out of their ass. Like, this is like a legit, like, I get it now. Like, I totally fucking get it. Like, okay, good on you, Mrs. Spike. I see you. I see you. So, like, yeah, it's just all about standing in your truth, and staying in your truth is like the bravest shit. And it's not easy, and it's like a daily thing. And I would love, like, I wanted to talk about feminine energy too, but I feel like we got like a really good chunk of a good Culture Fest conversation. And you were talking about how you were teaching kids how to check in with themselves. And before I do this, is there anything else that you would like to touch on? Like that you would, connect to your story, or like anything else?
I mean, maybe just generally speaking, you touched on a little bit with trauma, and a lot of the work that I do is based in like trauma informed yoga too, and finding ways of weaving in the yin practice, because yin can be triggering, but I mean that's another beast. But my path to doing trauma informed, stem from some unresolved trauma from my end, and just recently sustaining trauma to the point where yoga, I found yoga as a way for healing. And then just recently, yoga has turned into a trigger. And
Wow.
being able to, so I guess a little bit storytelling, because, we are talking about sharing stories as ways of modes of healing. And, this is part of one of the reasons why I'm going through therapy too. And I think it's also, and this is something that I've been kind of like towing the line and sharing in anything. But I mean, a lot of people know already about my past trauma, my past sexual trauma, which kind of led me into yoga. And unfortunately, like, years later, within that same space, not within the yoga studio, but within that same space, I was assaulted, and thinking like, oh my God, I think I just cheated on my fiance. But then, and I'm not saying like you have to go through trauma, sexual trauma, to know what you went through, but because I had experienced that before, coming out of that experience, I'm like, no, that was not right. Like I absolutely like, and that, so it's been, absolutely. It's been a journey just having to like, do I keep doing this? Because, I came to this to teach it, to heal. And then now all of a sudden, like this was in this space where I was harmed again. And, doing the work with that. But because, I know so much about myself, but I'm still learning so much about myself. And what I know, what I keep telling, or what I keep sharing is like, we share stories because we know like this is how we can connect. This is how we can also heal. Because how healing and how validating has it been for me in the past when I heard other people's stories, and like I don't have to be afraid. And so like knowing that then, and then all of a sudden being in a position where I'm like, this time, I mean, not to invalidate my time before, but like this time has been like earth shattering, because this is, so many complexities within this.
Sure.
And how do I show up for myself? How do I keep showing up for myself? Or how do I keep showing up for others? And when I think about all, being able to share stories and be seen and validated, and knowing how this can heal me, being able to share that. And I want to say this to all survivors out there who are maybe going through it or just thinking about like sharing their stories. It's scary. Yeah, it's scary to be, for me, it's frightening. I almost want to get emotional, and like it's frightening to be witnessed during this time, because I'm like, that's like just thinking back to my childhood and how, times I've been gaslit, or something was wrong, or like something was done wrong to me, not being like validated or witnessed in that time. And knowing that, and like being able to infuse that into my teachings, and then put into that position now, I'm like, oh, fuck, right? Yeah. Like this is everything that I'm teaching. And then like wanting to share it, but also like so badly wanting to share it. And this is actually the first time one of the first times I'm able to publicly speak about it, is that I know, I mean, I don't have to, like, I don't owe anyone my narrative. I don't owe anyone my narrative. I don't owe anyone my story, but I know because there's some type of power being, like, I know how to be able to help someone else. And because I'm on that precipice, that edge, to anyone who may be hearing this, I get it. It's scary as fuck. I get scared out of my mind just being seen right now. And I know how important it is. And I mean, from me to you, for anyone who's out there who may be feeling this, call out a girl. I mean, I'm here. Yeah, a little, getting a little emotional because it's so important to be able to feel that and witness, you know. So yeah, and I mean, even talking to my therapist, like, she's like, I don't want to minimize what you're going through, but you seem, you know, given what you've gone through, you seem okay. You know, I mean, in so many words. I mean, she didn't say that exactly, but I said,
sure.
It's been a lot of work, but I still need you to help me, Mama. You know, to my therapist. So, so important to know that yes, you're brave, and you could be scared out of your mind and still be brave, and I see that within myself, and I just want, you know, for anyone who may be feeling that too, just know I may not know exactly what you're going through, but I know deep down, like, yes, you are brave, you're fucking strong, and I get it. It is super scary, and we can build. I mean, we can build community around that, not community like, oh my god, we're all scared in the same room type of feeling,
not in
right?
a
Like, you got a bunch of weird motherfuckers. Yeah, no, right? But as long as you know that there are others who are moving through the same processing and rinsing, it helps. And just to know that you can put on a brave face for as long as, you know, for as many times as you need to. But you are also witness in the fear, and it is scary, but it is also, I mean, there are moments where I still can find beauty in that fear, because it's not that like, oh, this is nothing. No, it's like there's beauty in it too, because even in the areas where the light doesn't shine, there's so much depth. Just think about like where the sun can hit a canyon. There's still all these shadows, right, in the canyon. You could see beautiful spots in the canyon, but then there are little shadow areas where you can't see in the canyon. But just think about, like, even where the sun doesn't hit, even where the light doesn't hit, there's a lot of depth. There's so much more. And in that depth, it could be scary, it could be frightening, it could be, some people can find a lot of joy in it too. But it's in that depth, there's just so much beauty that's just waiting for you to peel back and just find. Because as fresh as what I'm going through, like, it's fresh. It's, I mean, not like yesterday fresh, but I mean, within the past few months fresh. But what I have been able to just find in those darkest moments, and being courageous enough to pull myself out of it, I mean, that's work. But it's also reckoning with my fear and all that. And so not being dragged down into the darkness, but at some point making friends with it. And that's also the practice of yoga, is not to, again, being absorbed or attached so much to those thoughts or those stories that, you know, we think we identify with, but knowing the page is still turning. You still have the pen. You're the author. You keep writing, and keep writing to all of us. I mean, it may be like a bunch of word vomit on a page, but hey, I mean, that's a chapter that's worth being in your book. So.
Man, like journaling, like, okay, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that story and that part of yourself and being so vulnerable. I don't take that lightly, and I know that there will be people who will hear your story and find solace in it. And these are the types of conversations, this is the type of depth, these are the types of stories and connections that I really, really work hard to bridge the gap to. And I commend your bravery, and I commend your willingness to put yourself out there, because I know how fucking scary it is, Grace. And it's like I don't even have like the words to say, but thank you. Thank you so much for giving that to this platform. That's incredible. That is literally incredible. And listeners, take advantage of the hand that she's giving out to you guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what I mean by tribe. This is what I mean about this platform being much bigger than me, and realizing that I am that bridge to help people of all walks of life connect. And Grace is one of those people. I've known her for years, and like, I'm telling y'all, like, take advantage of that, build community. And you know, she's Fuzz family. And so just thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your energy. And you were talking a little bit earlier about how you would do like check-in exercises, you know, with the kids and stuff like that. And I was wondering if you can help close out this episode with like a small little meditative check-in exercise we can all do. That's maybe like a minute or 2 minutes that we can do a day.
So I mean, you could do that, like verbally ask yourself what, you know, how you're feeling, how you doing. But and as far as like maybe something more tangible, I like to come back to somatic experiencing practices, and that's how I use my trauma-informed practice, or how I teach my trauma-informed practice, is that they're based in somatic experiencing. And for those who are familiar with somatic experiencing, it's being able to, it's essentially yoga. It's just being able to bring the body and the mind back into stasis when, you know, when we are moving through trauma. Sometimes, you know, the PTSD symptoms may bring us back into that moment, and then it feels like we're reliving it. And so what the somatic experiencing practices do is to, when those triggers do come up, that we have these resources to ground us back down. And so one is just to orient into your space, which is basically like, you prompt yourself, or even just use this each time, depending on what you want. And way to orient to your space is just to look around, and whether to identify a color or identify an object, something that's pleasing to the eye for you. And so when you're like, you know, for instance, like pampas class, okay, grass. So I'm like, okay, this is pleasing to my eye. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, or if I'm feeling like I need some type of grounding, then at least I can look back to this, like, no, I'm here, I'm present, this is where I am right now. I'm not in tomorrow, I'm not in yesterday, I'm here right now, you know, looking at this pampas class. Like, orient your space. So orienting yourself into your space. Secondly, like touch sense or felt sense. And that could be simply like, you know, holding onto your forearms like this. This is one that I like to do. I recently posted this on my Instagram. I like to work a lot with acupressure points. And so one way of moving to felt sense is, you know, just to kind of do this motion with your arms, almost like you're giving yourself a hug. And this practice, it targets a lot of these
and for those
meridian
listening,
lines.
she's like, she's grabbing her, she's almost like literally hugging herself. So she's like squeezing her shoulders, squeezing her like arms, her forearms, and kind of like going down. So check out the YouTube video so you can get like a full visual. But yeah, for those listening, she's literally hugging herself.
Yeah. Forgot to actually play it out verbally, but yeah. So I mean, you're just kind of, I caution using the word grab, and a lot of the practices too is just being mindful of the words and the communicating, whether it can be you know, it's a lot to consider. If like, you know, for instance, if I'm teaching a trauma-informed class, depending on my audience, I may not want them to start on their back. I would likely not have them do cat-cow or down dog or anything like that. So mindfulness and behind that. So maybe not grabbing your arms if that triggers you, but more like, you know, kind of palpating your arms, and then and then moving up into your arms. And so I like to focus on the arm space, because I mean, you could do this even with the ground. You could place your hands on the ground, or even just bare feet on the ground. But anything that could bring you to this sense of, again, being present. And the way I like using the arms is because there's a lot of lines, meridian pathways to run along the arm. By simply just kind of, giving yourself a hug or just patting yourself like so, you're targeting a lot of these lines. And these lines, emotion and the meridian, a lot of these lines, they can help with depression, anxiety, sadness and grief, even joy or manic energy. So this is a nice way to kind of like bring yourself back to like, okay, no, I'm here. And then at the same time, orienting yourself to your space. And finally, breath. Breath is so huge. I mean, sometimes I'll start my yoga classes saying, if you do nothing else but breathe in this class, you're doing yoga. I mean, I also in the beginning of class one time said, if you want to lay in shavasana the entire time, then you can. I did have someone do that one time, and I will never cue that anymore because it was just like, I mean, while I did mean it, it was the circumstances of the class, it was not conducive for someone to be laying in shavasana the entire time. So I'm again mindful about that. Yeah. So I mean, just three things. I mean, not just three things, but three simple things that you could do just to ground yourself back down. Just again orienting yourself to your space, to your surroundings. Just kind of. I mean, I joke sometimes, but also it maybe not so much joking, but because it's so taboo to talk about sex. But I mean, even self-sense, like masturbation. Like I'm starting to. I mean, that's another too. Is even with my past, sometimes being able to own up to your sexuality and being able to express it and talk openly about that too is healing. And so like whether your self-touch is doing this, like palpating your arms like this, or even like loving on yourself in your bed, get your nightstand boyfriend, whatever you have, nightstand girlfriend too, whatever will help you out to feel pleasure, just feel like you're as orgasms feel like maybe just like that release, like that release. And then finally breath is like
I'm on like
and then for your breath gonna put on some Bridgerton and like get my with Bridgerton, whatever. I mean, it's entertaining. I'll give it that.
I love Bridgerton. I'm a fan of all the fluff and all the corniness and all the sap. I'm an avid Lifetime movie watcher. So I ate Bridgerton up. They just approved season 2, so I'm more than excited. I ate it all up. I didn't care.
I mean, it was totally, face value, definitely not my bread and butter. I'm like, I do not want to get into this, but like, give me a day when I'm like, well, and then all of a sudden the Duke. I
know. Oh, I know. Yeah. A lot of women said, oh, the Duke.
I mean, the Duke, the D. Anyway, so there's that. And then the breath, just being able to, my go-to breath is always just to extend my exhales. And sometimes, like I'll get it in the morning too. Like, maybe I shouldn't be drinking so much coffee in the morning, but like if I tend to overindulge and then I just feel like I'm feeling really kind of, again, manic, then long exhales. So longer the exhales, one, regulating the heartbeat, but also it's really just grounding you back down. So long exhales, or even just combining the both, like hand over your heart, one hand over your stomach, and then including the breath with that. Like even just noticing the rise and fall of your belly and your chest mimicked, felt by their hands. So that's a nice way to couple that. As a way to bring it back. But Pierre Levine, he is the psychologist who founded or really did a lot of the research for somatic experiencing. I would look more into that, but his practices in somatic experiencing married with yoga and how that can translate into trauma-informed yoga is huge. And just being able to practices too out of the the framework of yoga, and just being able to have those as resources to help self-regulate, like more accessible. So as long as that information is accessible to the greater population to be able to have it. So, I mean, I'm just like, again, many thanks for allowing me to be on your platform, to be able to share this, because it's so important, because like a lot of the resources that we have in order to help ground us, they're really are right at our fingertips, but are we educated on that? And it's so like, let's all be educated. Let's all continue to be students and learn from kids too. Like, you'll be surprised, just learning from kids and what they have to share. Just even just being able to think outside the box, because they can think outside the box. Just taking it back to the kids for a second. Yeah, we have so much at our disposal. We need to make accessibility available, make the information available, and also know for anyone who is sharing that information, like sometimes it's easy for us to get wound up in ego, thinking like, oh, this is proprietary to me. Like I know I own this shit. Like but nothing. When you think about it, nothing is really original. We just kind of make it our own to some degree, and that could bring in more discussions on appropriation. But I mean, but as a way to honor it. So while I do have background in Chinese medicine, yoga, meditation, a lot of information coming from different lineages, and how I can make that work for what I want to share, but also still honoring it and not like, washing it down to make it more palatable for those who aren't ready to go so deep.
Oh yes, honey. Yep. That's why. Yeah, it's just very, very important to just be around people who are just on the same level, and that doesn't mean that you're like any less of a nice person. It's just you are making sure that you're giving yourself the ingredients to really thrive, So, Grace, thank you so much for being on my show, for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your stories, your connection, your vibes, your energy, all of that. Please let my listeners know where they can find you and if you're doing any online classes or anything like that.
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at Grace Lorenzo Yoga. Also, I just joined the TikTok. You can find me.
Muzzle top.
I mean, most of the videos that are going on there are just like the reels that I make on Instagram, and it's posted on TikTok.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right, but I mean, I'm having fun with it. So I mean, I was always so against it, but I'm like, okay, and that's
Such is life.
It's fun. It's fun. Yeah. So on TikTok, you can find me there. Same thing with Facebook, Grace Lorenzo Yoga. And on February 5th, I'm finally launching my website, where,
nice.
You'll be able to, people will be able to see like everything I do, all my offerings, so I don't just do yoga. I also do cupping. I do like meridian body work and all that. So it's all the, currently I have some online classes on Zoom. So every Monday and Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific time, I do a yin class. And for those who aren't familiar with yin is just, it's a very grounded practice where you hold a pose for anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes at a time, sometimes even longer. I held a camel pose for 7 minutes one time. That was intense, but very revealing. Yeah, I mean, yeah, every Monday and Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, yin. You can find the sign-in link on my Instagram. There's a link on my bio. And then also starting in February, when my website launches, there will be some other classes that I'll be offering. So something more, a little more dynamic, more movement, because there have been requests for that. But those are what I offer right now. Yin is my baby. I love yin. I mean, I went into yoga wanting to teach vinyasa, but all of a sudden now I'm like, I just want to teach yin. But I teach a lot, so I teach a lot of different formats. So, but I hope to see some of you join it. I hope to see you join in one of these days.
I know. I was like, I'm going to have to take one of those. I don't know about 7 minutes, but I'll give it my all.
Not hold you in camel for 7 minutes. I won't hold you in any pose for 7 minutes. The longest I've ever held in the 5 lately, I've been getting people to yin. So I've been gentle. I'm like, okay, maybe we'll start with 2, and then we'll venture to 3.
Okay,
and maybe I'll throw in a 5-minute one.
No, but I'm definitely gonna have to check you out. Absolutely. My goal, my theme this year is tapping into my divine feminine energy and like really like tapping into my yin. So I don't feel this is a coincidence. I feel like it's right on time. So yeah, I'll definitely be poking around and seeing what's up with that and how I can become more rooted with different parts of myself, because I feel like I got enough yang. I need more yin. So
Oh, I mean, so much that can be learned from. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of today has not just from yin, but has definitely come from reflections from yin, because you're not moving. Like if I get you into a pigeon pose, you're not moving for a few minutes, so you just got to sit with it. So when you're sitting in that discomfort, a lot can come up for you, and then when you emerge from it, it's like, oh my god. I mean, just feeling the stretch itself, that's like you're disengaging many years of tension of trauma and like all the stickiness, and then as soon as you're out of it, it's like that breath of fresh air. But I can't wait to see you in one of these yin classes too.
I would love it. I would love it. It's funny, like when you're describing it, it's like I've definitely done yin before. I've had instructors where they've incorporated a little bit of yin through their vinyasa practices. So like at the end is where we'll hold like a pigeon pose for like 3 to 4 minutes. And I remember fucking loving those. And I'm trying to like reenact those, and I'm having a difficult time like tapping into that. So it'll be a nice thing to get that direction from someone again, from like just like an instructor who's like guiding me through that. Because yeah, like those were some of the most phenomenal, like I'll never like I was blessed enough, I went to this 24-hour gym or somewhere, LA Fitness, I forget, in Culver City. And there's this one instructor, I just lucked out, she did Zumba and yoga, and her yoga class was phenomenal. But I remember at the end of every single class, she had us do at least 1 or 2 very deep stretches. And she would guide us through the breath and guide us through our thoughts and what we should focus on, what we should release. And I remember and at the end of all of those, and I remember taking my sister, and she was like, holy shit. And we had smoked before then too. And like, I'm not saying everyone go smoke weed and do this, but I feel like it added like a different element to it. Like I felt like a sponge that had been wrung out. Like it just felt like just loose and released and relaxed. And like even doing it not high, I felt like I was high afterward. Like it was just like, wow. So it's yeah, I need that. So I'll definitely be like participating, because that was some of the best releases. They were so good. Like I remember it to this day what that felt like. So it's like, again, that's what it was. It's like, oh wow, that's what that was. Okay, I just learned something new today.
I mean, I remember the first time I ever cried in a pigeon pose. I mean, I just remember, either whether I was taking class or doing my training, teachers will often say like, one, the hips are the juncture over the emotions, or, sometimes in a deep hip opening class, students tend to cry. And for the longest time, like stretches. Getting into these, right? And so getting into some of these stretches and just thinking like, teachers are talking about students crying and shit. I'm not. But anyway, I remember it was during one of my last trainings, or my second training rather, and I was in the single pigeon, and I was doing a lot of deep diving into my final project, and a lot was coming up for me. And one of my classmates from the training, she was a teacher assistant, or for that class, and so she gave me an adjustment on my left hip, I believe, and just the release that was able to come out of that, I'm like, oh my god, that felt good. And all of a sudden I couldn't control. What's the salty discharge coming out from my eyeballs, right? Like, what is this? That's when it's like, oh, I get it now. And then, like, because I was starting to marry everything from, like, my research in trauma and, like, my own self-work and also taking care of my inner child, going back, like, inner child work. Talk about all these beasts and I bring up, like, that's another beast. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's amazing how so much can get stored, but it's not like, oh, I'm sad, I'm just going to put that in my hip. No, it's just how our body tends to react, and we hold that until we've given the space to let go. And oh, how good does it feel to let go? Get that in the yin class, y'all.
I think that's a great way to end it. It's like, give yourself the space to let go. Like, that's phenomenal. That's extremely profound. And I think we can all keep that in our back pocket and just remember to give ourselves grace. I feel like yoga is a great way to teach yourself to give yourself grace, to allow yourself to be a beginner at things, to not, it's like a way to do something without putting so much pressure on yourself and just being. Like, there's so many layers to yoga. I feel like we talk about yoga for like ever and ever and ever. We got a good solid 2 hours of it, so I want to end it on that. And again, Grace, thank you so much. Guys, make sure you reach out. Make sure you go check out her yin class. Get rooted. Y'all know where to find me. Rissa SOFAR, Culture Fuzz, on all social media platforms. And that's it, y'all. I will catch you guys next week. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, that was the interview with Grace. Make sure you guys follow me on all social media platforms at Rissa SOFAR, and also Culture Fuzz, except Twitter is Culture Fuzz Fuzz. Also, a friendly reminder, if you love this show, if you find yourself coming back to it, if you just genuinely enjoy the show, I wanted to invite you to buy me a cup of coffee. So if you head over to culturefuzz.com, go to the podcast tab, you'll see a little bit down the page, I have a tips jar. You can donate Cash App, PayPal, what's the other one? Venmo, I think. So, there's different options, but I wish that this is something that I could just do for free all the time, but it takes a lot of resources. Like, do it for the rest of my life. Like, without question, this is something I really love doing. Creating this platform, developing this platform for you guys is amazing, but it does require resources to make it as high quality as humanly possible while working by myself. You know what I'm saying? So anything helps. A cup of coffee can be $1 to $5 if we're going to Starbucks and getting something, fancy and blended. But I drink about a cup a day. And, if there's a way that you want to help with the show, contribute to the show, that is definitely one way, So head on over to culturefuzz.com, hit the podcast tab, and that's where you'll find it. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. The support up until this point, honestly, I am just so beyond freaking humbled, and I love the feedback that I've been getting. I love the traction, slowly but surely. Culture Fuzz has been catching some attention, and I don't take it lightly, and I really hope and know that this show will find the people who need it. If it's right for that person, if it's right for you, like, it's going to find you. And I don't believe in coincidences. If you're listening to this episode, if you found this show, I invite you to listen to all conversations with an open mind and an open heart. And if something serves you, keep it. If it doesn't, okay, cool. You don't have to subscribe to it. It doesn't mean anything. You just let it go. You just let it float on by. But anyway, again, my name is Rissa, aka Rissa SOFAR, and I will catch you guys next week. Bye. Mwah.